I did miss being with you all the last 2 weeks. And I heard it got a little wild in here last week, right? I still haven't watched it, but I will. But I was also just so very thankful for some time away. Fred and I were able to spend time with our youngest grandsons, who are 11 and 14, and so amazing. We saw some baseball games. They still seem like they last for 10 years. We also had the opportunity to spend time with our 2 great-grandchildren, who are, according to them, almost 3 and almost 5. And while I have and will always love being a grandmother, I must admit, great-grandchildren may be the best gift of all. When the great-grandchildren arrived, their mother, our oldest granddaughter, had trouble getting them out of the car seats because they were so excited. And once freed, they ran directly for us, hugging us around our legs and yelling our names, which are Gaga and Papa. They had not seen us in over a year, so I don't know if she'd been showing them pictures on a regular basis, because, at that age, a year is a really long time. We had such a fun afternoon. There was a trunk of games at the house where we were staying, and they had great fun playing card games and Jenga. Only Jenga wasn't really Jenga. Miraculously, the different Jenga pieces became dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate. And if you were playing very nicely, they would give you some pretend chocolate as a reward. My pile was much higher than Fred's, which just goes to prove that everyone in our family loves chocolate from birth. By the time the afternoon was over, Fred was no longer just their papa. He was their papasaurus. Our great-grandson had talked nonstop about dinosaurs and gave Fred that lovely official new name. After they had gone home with their mom for baths and dinner and bed, as I replayed the afternoon in my mind and in my heart, I thought about how precious it is to be able to see the incredible innate spark of God that each one of us carries from our birth. It was so evident in those precious kiddos, and it did make me a little more ready to spend more time with them. When I returned to the real world and the office this week, I picked up a book by the poet and teacher Mark Nepo. Nepo wrote the Book of Awakening a long time ago, but it is as true now as it was then. While the book does talk about Nepo's personal journey, it also relates stories of other people's struggles with their humanness. And all of the stories have been woven together with truths from the great wisdom traditions. It is beautiful to see how these wisdom traditions come together and are interwoven with people's actual life stories. This book came to me a few years after I began to truly explore and experience Celtic Christianity. It was during this time that I began to take into my being the idea of original blessing and how different life could be without the traditional teaching of original sin. I was captured by the way Nepo insisted that each and every one of us is born with what he calls an uncumbered spot, one that is free of expectation and regret, free of ambition and embarrassment, free of fear and worry. Nepo likes to think of this place as an umbilical spot of grace, where we each were first touched by the Holy One. And he believes that peace, true peace comes from this spot of grace. I think this is where all of our goodness comes from. Yes, peace, and also love and joy and kindness and grace and goodness and hope. Psychologists call this spot the psyche. Theologians call it the soul. Jung calls it the seat of unconsciousness. Hindu masters call it Atman. Buddhists call it Dharma. Rilke calls it inwardness. Sufis call it Qalb. And Jesus calls it the center of our love. Many of us go through life unaware of this spot of inwardness. Those who are fortunate enough to find it have the opportunity to discover who we are and what we are made of in a much deeper way. Becoming aware of this spot of grace allows us to go beneath the surface markers of identity, things like what our job is, where we live, what we possess. If we can step away from all the markers that define us, we can begin to see ourselves in relation to the Holy One. And we can begin living into who we truly are. It is a lifelong task, this discovery of the self, and it is heavily influenced by everything and everyone we come in contact with. Living before us and among us are people who have embraced this spot of grace, and their joy continues to amaze me. Many of those people are sitting in these pews today. Reading also again this week the Book of Joy and thinking about the lives of Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama who are accompanying us on this Eastertide journey reminded me of the way they defined forgiveness as an act of compassionately releasing the desire to punish someone for an offense. While I do agree that is a good definition, I also think we could define acts of true forgiveness as a bona fide miracle. When we learn the life stories of Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, it is a miracle they found a way to forgive the unforgivable. Bishop Tutu always said that forgiveness does not mean we condone or minimize the awfulness of an atrocity or wrong. Rather, he said, forgiveness recognizes the ghastliness, then chooses to acknowledge the essential humanity of the perpetrator and to give that person the possibility of making a new beginning. Forgiveness, Tutu said, is an act of hope and not despair. It is hope in the essential goodness of all people, and it is given in faith that our collective futures might bring change. Sometimes in our lives, we are given the opportunity to work through forgiveness, whether we are the ones who need to forgive or the ones who need to be forgiven. At other times in our life, that is not possible. And without our conscious understanding of how that can affect us, a sense of unease may lodge in our unconscious mind and in our bodies. This sense of unease can follow us no matter where we go or what we do. Sometimes, putting away the parts of our life that brought us harm is like pulling up a blanket that keeps us from freezing to death. Sometimes, though, the flow of life brings it back around, and we find we have the opportunity to forgive the unforgettable. This is so important because without forgiveness, we remain tethered to the person who harmed us. In another life, over 40 years ago, I found myself in an extremely abusive first marriage. It was something I had no context for, and I felt great shame, believing it had to be my fault. I did not tell my parents or my siblings or my closest friends. I did not tell anyone. My sister finally realized what was happening, and the psychologist she was dating at the time gave me the permission to leave and to do it quickly and decisively because it was not safe for me to do otherwise. And so I closed one chapter of my life and thankfully began a new, sweet, and precious life with someone who could always be trusted. So it turns out these precious grandchildren and great-grandchildren live in the place where my worst nightmare was lived out. And for years, my heart has wanted to eventually live there, but apparently my body could not agree. When I am in that place, I have to fight the sense of dread that comes over me. And most of the time, I refuse to even acknowledge that feeling. So last week, after being there, when we returned to my beloved LA that I really never want to leave, it was time. Last Sunday, after brunch at the amazing vegan restaurant we love, my body and my mind felt safe enough to realize forgiveness was at the heart of what was stopping me from being able to live in a place where my littlest loved ones are. It was without tears or guilt that I realized I had never forgiven the one person who harmed me the most in my lifetime. Please understand, forgiveness in the midst of what happened to me and even for years later may not have been safe. Now that that person has been dead for many years and no longer a threat, it is time to forgive. In talking to my spiritual director and friend this week, who I've been working with for so many years, I felt such great relief that finally I have unlocked the part of myself that could not forgive. It was as if my umbilical space, my soul, my heart was finally open enough to receive the ability to forgive. And yes, I do feel great sorrow for the life of the person who harmed me. And I'm sorry that they never were at a place that allowed them to ask for forgiveness or to receive it. And with my whole heart, I do believe they have found peace. I had a hard time deciding to share this with you today. As ministers, we are careful to understand fully what it means to consciously use our own life experiences as we feed our sheep. It is a big responsibility to be the shepherd of a community of faith. I am aware I have not shared this story in large part because there was no resolution. I still not only had to forgive the person who hurt me, but I also had to forgive myself for waiting so long to forgive him. learning and embracing the art of forgiveness is not just for shepherds. It is for all of us who are sheep. And forgiveness, my friends, gives light to our lives. It is what allows us to love and be loved. And without forgiveness, our joy is not all it could be. My hope is that this week, in your search for joy, you will write two things down. The first is a person that you need to forgive. And the second is what you need to forgive in yourself. And while I won't make breakfast for you like Jesus did in the scriptures, I will make you a latte. Please know, if you want help to talk it through, my door is always open. May it be so.